Right guys, welcome back to the channel. In this video I'm just going to show you how to service your front hub on your wheel. If you've got cup and cone front bearings, so i.e. you've got loose ball bearings in it, not cartridge bearings. So I'm just going to show you how to do that, so we'll get on and we'll run through the steps. Right, here we have the wheel in question. As you can see, it's a Shimano. It's got a Shimano hub in it with a cup and cone individual bearings. So the first thing you need is to get yourself, if you haven't got a set of the cone spanners, the thin spanners like so. They can vary in size, 13mm, 14, 15 on the internal flat in there. So you've got a flat inside there, then you've got a flat on the outside, so you've got two. So you've got the flat side up in here, and then you've got the flat on this piece that you can see with the two flats on it. So you need a spanner for one and a spanner for the other one. Obviously you're holding the internal one in there, and then you're undoing this one on the outside. So as you can see, it's got Shimano. This just happens to be a Shimano hub. I say all hubs can vary, but before you go and undo anything, make sure that you've either counted the threads or measured with a tape measure or a ruler the distance there of what threads you've got sticking out, because obviously that needs to rest on your bottom of your drop out, on your fork. So both sides, you want to measure that and make a note of what that is, so when you go put it back together, you know that you've got it right on the axle there. Right, so once you've got your two cone spanners like so, you can go ahead and put one on the inside flat like that, and then on the outside you can crack that one undone. So obviously hold one spanner and then undo the outside spanner, just holding the inside one, crack it undone. Then you can go ahead and take off the nut on the outside there, like so. So once you've got the lock nut off there could be a washer behind it, as you see there, so make sure you put it down in the way it came off, so you don't muddle up any of the parts if you're not sure. Then what you can go ahead and do is just, I haven't done anything to this side yet, so you can just go ahead to remove that. Just go ahead and hold this side on the outside on the lock nut, which I haven't taken off yet. If you hold it on this side, then you can just unpinch the cone from this side. So once it comes off a bit, you should be able to just get it with your fingers then, and you can start winding it off. And then it will start coming off like so. You start threading off the axle there, start wobbling around now. So that's the cone part. And once you get that, obviously keep the wheel tilted over a bit, so obviously the ball bearings are loose in there. So you wind that, just unthread it all the way. Looks like that. Do you see the cone shape of it there? Right, so once you've wound the cone all the way off, there it is there. Put that to one side. Now once you've got it off this side and there's nothing left there, obviously the axle now will just pull all the way out this side, like so. Now if it starts to come out, you may see the ball bearing stuck to it with the old grease. But like I say, if you remove the axle from the middle, like so, there's the whole axle itself assembly. So now you can go ahead, what you need to do is get a magnet, obviously a little pencil type magnet, then you can pick up these ball bearings, because everything now is going to need cleaning up obviously. so we can check everything over. Right, so once you're ready to remove the ball bearings, you get yourself a little pencil magnet like so to make it easier, and you just put it in there, just run it round, and you can lift out the ball bearings on the end of it like so. You can see them stuck on there. Go ahead and just remove them all from each side. Right, so you saw me remove the shaft and it still left the lock nut and the cone on this end. Obviously now I've removed the bearings and I've just cleaned this off, degreased it. Then if you're replacing the axle, say, all you got to do is crack the lock nut undone with the two spanners again, and then you can just wind this off this end if you want to in component parts, and then make a note of how it come off, and then you can just wind off the cone. Say you want to replace the cone with a new one, you can just wind that off like that. Then you're left with the bare shaft. And then we can obviously inspect that, make sure it's straight still and it's not bent at all, which obviously affect the bearings. So you can replace this or replace any of the parts if you need to once you cleaned it. Right, so with regards to the actual hub itself, obviously you've got where the ball bearings were sitting in there. You've obviously got old grease in there that needs getting out both sides. So you go ahead and get an old piece of rag and put some degreaser on the rag and run it around in there and clean up the surface in there where the ball bearings will sit. So do that both sides. Right, so once you got everything cleaned up, obviously you can see in there that would have been full of the old grease. So make sure you thoroughly clean it out. Now you can spray it out with some degreaser, and get a paintbrush in there and brush it round, or you can get a piece of rag and put in there. But whatever you do, make sure if you use any solvent or whatever, degreaser, make sure it's all evaporated, or you've dried it all out properly. With a piece of rag, stick a screwdriver in there and just run a bit of rag round, or a piece of cloth, just to get rid of the old degreaser or solvent. So make sure it's fully evaporated before you go on to the next stage. Right, once you've got all the component parts and everything cleaned up, and you've got the hub cleaned out inside and it's all dried out and everything, you can go ahead and inspect the cones. Now if there was nothing wrong with the wheel when you took it apart, or you was just taking it apart to put new grease in it to keep it running properly, then there shouldn't be anything wrong, but it's worth inspecting them obviously. But if you took it apart because you obviously had play in the wheel, it was wobbling, then obviously you're inspecting to see what the problem was. Or it could be the ball bearings were worn out, or there was damage on the actual cone itself, or there might have been nothing wrong with it. The wheel might be wobbling, but if you just nip the bearings up, then it might have relieved the problem. But I would say something must be wearing, as it does over time. So you inspect the surface here, the silvery bit where it's worn away, worn off, as you can see, where it's no longer the black colour, just there. You inspect that surface for any pitting or corrosion around that surface. You get a slight bit of pitting on there. But if it's very bad, then you have to replace obviously the cone, this part, replace that with a new one, and obviously replace the ball bearings. So you can inspect the ball bearings or just buy some new ones. Obviously you want to buy them from a top quality make, preferably, and from a say a local bearing supplier or something. So you can get the correct size. If you're not sure, then you can take a few to a bearing supplier and they'll measure them up and see which ones you need. If you're not sure on the size that you actually need for your wheel, there's various different sizes. So once you're happy and you've got everything checked over, you can go ahead and what you need to do is put some grease back inside here where the ball bearings are going to sit. So obviously you can't put a ball bearing back in there, it would just fall straight out again. So you need to get something like a screwdriver and get some grease on the screwdriver, and then you can just put the grease back into there, Once you've gone round and you put it in all the way around, packed it in, then you're ready to put the ball bearings back in. Right, so once you've got your grease in, like so, you can either put it in there with a screwdriver or use the end of your finger, whichever is easiest to get the grease in there. Obviously you need plenty in there so you got something to put the ball bearings into, to stick them in. You can go ahead and get a magnetic screwdriver or a very small magnet. You can see there. You can just get a ball bearing and drop it in. Now obviously you want to stand the wheel up, preferably, like so. Just stand the wheel up and sit, and then you can just, if you drop the ball bearing into place like so, obviously it's going to pick it up again. If you use another, if you've got something magnetic, so the best thing to do is swap it for a screwdriver then that isn't a magnetic. So I've got another one of a similar size. I'll just grab it. So I've got another one here that's not magnetic, so then I can just go ahead and poke that into the slot, into the runner where it should be with this screwdriver, and just sit it into place like so, into the grease, and then it's sat in there. So I'll just use a non-magnetic for that, and then use a magnetic screwdriver or a very small magnet just to get them put into situ first. Then go ahead and go round. Obviously if you've got all your bearings on the floor, obviously make sure you counted them either side, or if you've got all the bearings that come out of there, then obviously you want an equal amount on both sides. So go ahead and we'll put those back in. Right, as you can see, once you've got your ball bearings put back in place on both sides there and packed in there, and you're ready to go ahead and reinstall the rest of the components. Right, so we got the bearings in, now ready to put the axle back in. So you can go ahead and screw the cone on that side. Obviously you don't want it bottomed out so it's hitting the stop. You can just back it off a bit from there to start with. And then you go ahead and put that back through your hub carefully, obviously, so as not knock any of the bearings out. So once you've got it sat through there, keep your finger on it on the other side there, just hold it in place. Then you can go and go ahead, just get this cone for this side, and put that back on. Because you got to remember, you've got to get the once you got it wound in like so, you've got to make sure that you've got obviously the correct amount of distance between the two on the axle sticking out either side. Once you've got the two cones just sat in there like so, obviously so holding the keeping the bearings in place on both sides, then you go ahead then and put your washer on. If yours had a washer fitted, obviously remember it's better to put the parts in order of how they come off, so you remember what your particular wheel had in it. So you go ahead and just put that back on that side or either side, just so it's on there. Just loosely, it's only on there so you know where it is at the moment. So once you've got them reassembled, like so, just go ahead and get it all back on, so they're both touching either side. You can go ahead and just check that you've got the right, like I said, right gap either side. That's why it's better to measure it before you take anything apart. So obviously your dropouts, your forks need to sit on the stub that's sticking out, the thread. So count the threads or measure it, like I said, before you take anything apart. Right, so once you got the axle through like I showed, and you got the cup on both sides snugged up and the lock nut and the washer in position, and just nip down so you can check, like I said, where your dropouts are going to sit, measure them. Then if you want to know how to tension up the bearing itself, the bearings, the ball bearings with the cones going down onto them, obviously you need your, if the lock nut, obviously you put your spanner on the inside like so, and then like that, and then get your larger spanner on the outside on the lock nut itself. Just make sure that you're holding the inside spanner, and then just nip down the outside like so, so it's tight, so the lock nut is tight, and then check, spin your wheel and see, or just turn the like so, make sure there's no play in it. You can feel any play. If you can feel any play, then obviously put your spanners on again, put your spanner back on, and crack open the lock nut, and then move your cone with your smaller spanner, just move it around a fraction, and then nip your lock nut back up again, because when you tighten the lock nut back up, when that's tight, then you want to check the bearing when the lock nut's tight, not when you've just done up the cone. When you're adjusting the cone and you haven't done up this lock nut, it'll give you a false reading. So once you can't feel any play in it like so, obviously you don't want to feel, if you feel any play there, then obviously it's going to be loose, it's going to be more exaggerated when you've got it clamped back in the bike and you can grab hold of the actual rim. So if you feel any play, so you don't want to feel any, it doesn't want to be tight, it's got to spin nice and freely, but you don't want to feel any play. Obviously there's no point over tightening them, because you'll just shorten the life of the bearings. So you go ahead and do that both sides. Once you're happy there's no play in it, the only way to really tell is just put it back in your dropout and then grab hold of the wheel and just rock it side to side when it's in the bike. Then that'll give you a better indication then. But obviously if you got it done, you can't feel any play there, and it spins nice and freely by hand, obviously it should spin freely with no noises or anything, especially if you just replace the bearings or the cones or anything. Should spin nice and free. Then you're ready, like I said, to go ahead and put it back in your bike. Right, so there's the front wheel complete there. I say with the service of the ball bearings. So it's easy enough to do, and it makes a lot of difference. If you take your wheel out and you just spin your axle, and you can feel any roughness to it, then you probably need to service your hub and your bearings. So I say you should just be able to spin it up, and it should they should spin, should be nice and quiet like so. I say the cup and cone bearings, they are good, they're just more fiddly obviously than cartridge bearings, but at least you can easily maintain them, and once you know how, then it's simple enough to check them over. Right guys, that was a quick demonstration on the cup and cone bearings, and how to remove and refit them. That was on a front wheel. Obviously it's different on a rear wheel. Now it's not always low end wheels that use the separate bearings like that with the cones. You can have them fitted to the high end wheels as well, so don't just think it's low end wheels that come with bearings like that. Not all high end wheels are cartridge bearings. Say Shimano Dura-Race wheels, they can use the cup and cone with separate bearings like that. I'll say now, if water gets into the bearings, like any bearings, if water carries the dirt into the bearing, then it's going to accelerate the wear on them. So obviously it's beneficial to check them from time to time, just to make sure, and put fresh grease in and keep them running 100%. At the end of the day, it's a rolling that matters. When you're going along on a bike, you're rolling along the road, so you want everything rolling as freely as possible. Otherwise you're just wasting energy trying to get along the road. Well, I say, if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. Remember to subscribe to the channel for more cycle related content. Until next video, ride safe and I'll see you then.